This is me driving my car. If I swerved into oncoming traffic right now, I would get fined and probably arrested. Last time I checked, I am a human. And when human drivers mess up, we face consequences. You get caught speeding, you get a ticket. Blow past a stopped school bus, you'll lose your license. Crash into someone and cause serious injury? Guess what, buddy? I hope you like spending the night in jail. But right now, there are thousands of cars on public roads making these exact same mistakes. They're stalling in intersections, they're driving into wet cement, they're ignoring emergency vehicles. But instead of getting their licenses revoked, they're getting billions of dollars in investments. Why? Because these aren't humans. These are robots. And companies like Tesla, Waymo, and Uber are racing to remove human drivers from the equation and replace them with robots. To get there, they have to break a few eggs. And the problem is, we are the eggs. Now, I love eggs. I love them scrambled and especially on sandwiches. But I'm not a huge fan of us being treated like breakfast food. And that's what's happening. Right now, across the US, companies are deploying thousands of autonomous vehicles that are roaming our streets. But they aren't just driving around, they are using us. One group is scanning our neighborhoods with lasers, capturing every inch of our lives to build 3D maps. The other is watching how we drive and treating your morning commute like a live training simulation for their beta software. So yeah, I think it's probably a good idea to understand everything we can about who we are sharing our roads with. Are self-driving cars safe? Why are tech companies going to war over our roads? Why is Elon Musk obsessed with making robotaxis work? And most importantly, why are we letting billion-dollar tech companies learn how to drive on the same streets where our kids are playing? Let's get started. In 2006, Pixar released the hit movie Cars. It introduced us to a world where vehicles had personalities, best friends, and even car eyeballs. Lightning McQueen was more than a car. He was a sentient being with hopes and dreams. Fast forward 20 years, and we actually have cars that can drive themselves. Sort of. There is a lot of confusion around self-driving cars, and I want to be very clear. This confusion isn't an accident. It is deliberate. So here's the truth. Autonomous vehicles generally refer to cars that handle all driving tasks on their own, without a human driver. That is the sci-fi futuristic scenario people usually imagine when you hear the phrase self-driving. You can play RuneScape on your phone, catch up on the news, or even take a nap while the vehicle safely gets you to your destination. If the car handles everything, that is full autonomy. Then there are driver assistance systems, which are designed to help a human driver, not replace them. These include features like adaptive cruise control, lane keeping, automatic emergency braking, and traffic-aware steering. Many of these technologies have existed in some form for years and have steadily improved over time. The problem, and that's a problem with a capital P, is that the difference between assistance and autonomy is rarely clearly explained to us consumers. In fact, it's usually deliberately blurred. For example, Tesla has been selling a full self-driving package on their cars for years. The name suggests that the car, drives itself, but they never delivered fully on their promise. In fact, just last year, Tesla was forced to reimburse a customer in an arbitration case after it was proven they failed to deliver on the full self-driving they sold. And that's not all. Right now, they are fighting massive class action lawsuits over this exact terminology, with judges ruling that their marketing might be deceptive. Additionally, until recently, every Tesla came with a driver-assisted technology called Autopilot. What's crazy about this is that Tesla engineers reportedly hated that name. They warned Elon Musk that Autopilot was misleading and pushed for something like Copilot instead. But Elon and the executives thought Autopilot sounded cooler, so they went with that. This kind of confusing language is not unique to Tesla though. General Motors markets Super Cruise as hands-free driving, and Ford does the same with Blue Cruise. And while that is technically true, that you can take your hands off the wheel, both systems only work in very specific situations, usually on pre-mapped highways. The Society of Automotive Engineers actually tried to solve this problem years ago by clearly defining 6 official levels of driving automation. In theory, this should have cleared everything up. Automakers could simply say, this is a level 2 and this is level 3. so everything would be easy to understand. But surprise, surprise, automakers hate this. Why? Because almost every single self-driving car you can buy today, including many previous Tesla models, are legally just level 2. Now, if you're like me, a lot of this might not matter. I mean, heck, my 2014 Ford Taurus is some of the most basic cruise control I've ever seen. I'm not planning on buying a self-driving car anytime soon. I'd much rather get something that's fuel efficient, reliable, and most importantly, safe. The thing is though, whether you like it or not, you're sharing the road with these machines. And if you're not yet, you soon will. And this is concerning a lot of people. According to a recent survey on autonomous vehicles, 66% of US drivers express fear about fully self-driving vehicles. Generally speaking, most people are like, yeah, no, I'm good. So how safe are these things? Really? If you look up videos of self-driving cars, there are plenty of examples of these rides going horribly wrong, some even with serious injuries or even fatalities. At the same time, there are also countless videos showing these systems working successfully. Tech YouTubers like Marcus Brown Lee, along with a wave of Tesla-focused creators, have shared extensive footage demonstrating self-driving and driver assistant features performing well in real-world situations. Meanwhile, both Waymo and Tesla insist that their robots are statistically safer than human drivers. And if you look at their websites, they have fancy charts to prove it. Waymo's senior director has gone on record stating that according to company research, their vehicles are involved in 84% fewer injury-based crashes than human drivers. And then Tesla claims their vehicles with supervised full self-driving experience far fewer collisions than normal cars. On paper, this looks like a slam dunk. I mean, look, they have charts. But here's the problem with trusting company data. It's company data. They can pick and choose what they want to track and, of course, what they want to release. For example, in a recent trial over a fatal crash, a Tesla engineer admitted that before 2018, the company didn't even maintain crash records. When asked if they tracked the number of crashes per mile during that time, he simply replied no. Additionally, Tesla used to publish safety reports every quarter. Then, after Q4 2022, they just stopped. For an entire year, radio silence. Why stop releasing the report card if you're getting straight A's? When they finally resumed reporting a year later, their whole methodology had changed. And it's not only company data that's suspect, federal data is too. If I crashed my car into a mailbox, the police would write a report. It would be a public record. Anyone could look it up and see exactly how I messed up. But when autonomous vehicles crash, something else happens. Federal crash data specifically shows that Waymo vehicles were involved in at least 202 crashes in Arizona between 2021 and 2024, ranging from minor door dings to 31 collisions that resulted in injuries. However, the records for these events are heavily redacted, making it nearly impossible to determine fault or the specific cause of the failure from the public file. Why? Well, the companies argue that this data must remain hidden as confidential business information, claiming that revealing why a robot failed would expose proprietary trade secrets to competitors. But here's the thing, a lot of these incidents aren't just minor fender benders. Some of these crashes and the issues these vehicles are having are generally concerning. Here, a Tesla violated traffic laws and drove into the wrong lane. Here, Tesla was found partly liable for a deadly crash. Here, a Waymo passenger got stuck in their car going in circles. Here, Waymos were found illegally passing school buses. This was all just reported in the last year and a half, and the school bus thing, that was reported just last month. But I want to highlight one specific example from late 2023 because it perfectly illustrates why we cannot trust these companies at face value. A few years ago, one of GM's Cruise Robotaxis ran over a woman in San Francisco. The accident was actually started by a human driver in a different car who hit the pedestrian first, throwing her into the path of the robot. The robot stopped, but then its programming decided the safest thing to do was to pull over to the curb. The problem? The sensors failed to realize the woman was still trapped underneath the car, so it dragged her 20 feet across the pavement, causing horrific injuries. But that's not even the most concerning part. Cruise was caught covering up the details of the crash and admitted to submitting a false report of the incident. When Cruise met with regulators after the accident, they showed them video footage of the crash, but they omitted the part of the video where the dragging occurred. So no, I I don't blame that 66% of US drivers that express fear about self-driving vehicles when we have multiple examples of auto manufacturers covering up details about accidents occurring with these vehicles. Now, to be fair, we can also find plenty of examples of human drivers doing equally unsafe things. Ever heard of that one small indie film? What was that called? Fast and Furious? Driving both Fast and Furious is so cool, they made like 20 movies about it. Humans really love speed and apparently fury, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if using an autonomous vehicle is safer in many circumstances. But that's not the point. With human drivers, there's a level of accountability because you are the driver. If you cause an accident, you are to blame. With self-driving cars, accountability is a massive question mark. And this has allowed these tech giants to conduct one of the largest social experiments in human history. Now, it's worth noting when you're making a deep dive like this, when you're talking about billion-dollar companies, court cases, and technology that's actively reshaping our cities, the visuals really matter. I'm pulling footage of real streets, traffic patterns, autonomous vehicles, city infrastructure, all of it. I need to look legitimate without turning my hard drive or my channel into a legal nightmare. That's why I use Storyblocks. Today's sponsor. Storyblocks is one predictable subscription that gives you unlimited downloads of high quality stock video, images, music, sound effects, templates, everything all in one place. No credits ticking down, no guessing whether I'm allowed to use a clip, and no surprise fees when I want to experiment with different edits or try a new visual idea. People ask me all the time what actually helped take my content to the next level, and honestly, a big shift was when I started using tools like Storyblocks. Put simply, Storyblocks lets me focus on research and storytelling instead of stressing over assets, saving me a ton of time. What I also really appreciate though is that their library is entirely human made. There's no generative AI footage used in their assets, which is a big reason I switched to Storyblocks and why many of my creator friends use it too. So if you want unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head to storyblocks.com/ZacharySmigel or click the link in the description. Thanks so much Storyblocks for sponsoring this channel. Okay, now back to it. So we've established the technology is messy, the marketing is confusing, and the safety data is, let's call it, selective. But to really understand where this is going, you have to understand who's driving the bus. Right now, the future of autonomous vehicles in the US has effectively boiled down to mainly two sides. After the Cruise disaster, GM largely pulled back from the front lines, repurposing some of that tech for their consumer cars, but effectively leaving the Robotaxi battlefield, leaving just Waymo and Tesla. And when I say battlefield, I am not remotely joking. When Waymo launched its Robotaxi service in Austin, Texas, it rolled out with a clearly defined, reasonably large, and practically geofenced operating area. It was just a chunk of the city where the cars were allowed to pick up riders to prove that the system actually worked. Not long after that though, Tesla responded in a very Tesla way. When Tesla released its own mapped operating area for its Robotaxi pilot in Austin, people quickly noticed the shape. The geofence was unmistakably phallic. And just to make sure everyone got the joke, the official Tesla Robotaxi account tweeted the new map with a caption, "Harder, better, faster, stronger." Elon Musk then quoted that tweet with "bigger, longer, and uncut." Wow, hilarious. About a week later, Waymo responded by expanding its operating area to be larger than Tesla's. And since last summer, this Robotaxi geofence measuring contest has been going on ever since. But this doesn't stop at maps. The leadership of both companies have been battling publicly as well. Elon Musk frequently retweets videos of Waymo vehicles getting stuck, stalling, or behaving oddly, using them as evidence that Waymo's approach to automated vehicles is flawed. He's also publicly claimed that Waymo never really had a chance against Tesla. Waymo's co-CEO, who usually stays quiet, recently fired back when asked about Tesla, saying that Waymo focuses on safety over cost, implying Tesla doesn't. And that's where this war has gotten political. Tesla has actively pushed California regulators to keep detailed robotaxi and autonomy data out of the public eye, arguing that disclosure requirements or quarterly reporting would be burdensome and could expose trade secrets. Waymo, by contrast, recently has publicly advocated for clear reporting and transparency, arguing that regulators and the public should be able to see what's actually happening on the roads. The irony is that Waymo has fought to keep some specific safety details confidential in the past, as I mentioned earlier. But now, when it's seemingly convenient for them, they want to be transparent. So yes, Waymo and Tesla are fighting fighting each other in a few different ways. But how, why, and who, if any of them, is winning this war? Well, it's essential to understand Waymo and Tesla are not actually building the same product. They're not even building the same idea of a product. They have the same end goal, remove the human driver. That's what they're battling over, but they disagree on how to get there, how fast to move, and how much risk is acceptable in this technological transformation. Waymo is a subsidiary of Alphabet, Google's parent company. They started all the way back in 2009 as the Google self-driving car project. Remember those cute little koala-looking cars everyone memed on for like a summer? Yeah, that was Waymo. But don't let the cute origins fool you. Being a subsidiary of Alphabet effectively means access to infinite money and, even more importantly, infinite data. Waymo's approach to self-driving is incredibly expensive but very precise. Their cars are covered in a massive array of sensors. We're talking cameras, radar, and most importantly, LiDAR. What is LiDAR? Great question. LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. Still don't know what that means? Well, essentially it's a spinning bucket that fires millions of laser pulses to build an incredibly detailed, real-time 3D map of the world around the car. It's really effective, but again, really expensive. The other half of what makes Waymo Waymo is the high definition mapping. Before Waymo vehicles even enter a city like San Francisco, Phoenix, or Los Angeles, Google has to map out the area in extreme detail. Waymo is actually currently testing in Pittsburgh, pretty close to where I live. I tried to sign up for one for this video, but had no luck. Pittsburgh is famously a nightmare to drive in. It's called the city of bridges for a reason. So if Waymo's autonomous vehicles can figure out Pittsburgh, that's a pretty strong sign they can work almost anywhere. But this is exactly why Waymo's expansion is so slow. They have to conquer territory block by block, city by city. No one knows the exact cost, but estimates place the cost per vehicle in the $100K to $150K range. So definitely more expensive than my 2014 Ford Taurus. And that's not even including the manpower or time it takes to map out the territory. You can't just drop a Waymo in a random town in South Dakota. If the map doesn't exist, the car doesn't work. So Waymo's approach to autonomous vehicles is expensive and slow, but it's also careful. And Tesla's, well, it's the exact opposite. You probably don't need a history lesson on Tesla, or Elon Musk for that matter. Tesla is currently the 10th largest company in the world by market cap. They've been memed on more than probably any automaker in history, and to their credit, Tesla was the first company to actually sell electric cars effectively to the public. They didn't invent electric cars, but they definitely made adoption faster. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're keeping track, Tesla, and specifically Elon Musk, hasn't really had the best track record when it comes to prioritizing safety or transparency. And what you might not realize is that attitude bleeds directly into their engineering philosophy. Tesla does not use LiDAR at all. Elon Musk has famously called it a crutch and a fool's errand. Instead, Tesla is betting almost everything on cameras and neural networks. The idea is that humans drive using vision. So if you could hypothetically train an AI to see like a human, it should eventually be able to drive like one too. No spinning lasers, no pre-mapped cities, just eyes and AI. So unlike Waymo, Tesla doesn't carefully scan cities. Tesla lets its system learn by driving on real roads with real people in real conditions, all at once. And the system, when working right, can look genuinely impressive. Teslas can navigate city streets, make tricky turns, and respond to complex traffic scenarios in ways that would have sounded impossible 10 years ago. The issue is that millions of Tesla owners are unpaid test drivers, and everyone sharing the road with them are effectively part of a massive science experiment. So as you can see, both companies have their own very different ideas for the future of autonomous vehicles. One is safe but slow, the other is fast and maybe even a little furious. But both are trying everything they can to crack car autonomy at a global scale. It might be too early to see who is winning this war, but we could take a look at the numbers and compare. If you look at scale, Tesla is absolutely crushing it. According to Tesla's website, Tesla vehicles have driven over 7 billion miles using full self-driving. That is an absurd number. By comparison, Waymo has logged around 100 million autonomous miles. So on paper, it's 7 billion versus 100 million. That looks like a blowout, right? But there's a catch. Tesla's 7 billion miles were supervised. That means a human was sitting there the entire time, ready to take over if the the car tried to do something dangerous. Tesla has only recently begun limited robotaxi testing without a safety monitor in the vehicle. This is going on right now in Austin, Texas, and those miles are nowhere close to Waymo's totals. So if you want to decide on who's winning, it really depends on how you look at it. If winning means most cars on the road with total miles, collecting data, period, Tesla wins. But if winning means actually replacing the driver, Waymo's the only one doing that at somewhat of a large scale today. Which I think brings us nicely to our next point. Why? Why are companies pushing so much for autonomy? Well, there are many reasons why companies are pushing for this tech, some less obvious than others. I talked before in my Spotify video about how the modern stock market is less of a financial system and more of a casino run by raccoons. We have companies trading at valuations that are frankly insane. When it comes to companies promising us self-driving cars, the math is just as blurry. And nowhere is that math blurrier than at Tesla. Despite their sky-high valuation, 2025 was a rough year for Tesla financially. Tesla's net income fell to about $3.8 billion, a 46% drop from the year before. Additionally, total revenue slipped roughly 3%, marking one of the first times in recent history that Tesla's annual revenue actually declined at all. This is all happening while government support for Tesla has essentially dried up. Many electric vehicles, including several Tesla models, lost eligibility for federal tax credits worth up to $7,500. That made purchasing Teslas more expensive overnight. Then there's a lesser known detail that not that many people realize. For years, Tesla quietly padded its margins by selling regulatory credits, essentially pollution permits to other automakers that couldn't meet emission targets. But in 2025, income from regulatory credits dropped by about 28%. All of this equals, financially speaking, a terrible year for Tesla. If Ford or GM posted shrinking revenue and profits cut in half, their stock would be annihilated. Wall Street would be calling for the CEO's head. But Tesla is currently trading at a market cap of around $1.3 trillion. Why is a company with declining profits worth more than the companies that sell the most cars on Earth? Well, it's complicated, but comes down to one specific thesis. Tesla's valuation only makes sense if you buy into all of it. Full self-driving, robotaxis, humanoid robots, a future where cars drive themselves, where Tesla owners make money while they sleep, where Tesla isn't even a car company at all, but a global transportation network, an AI company, and eventually a robotics company. That story has attracted one of the most loyal, aggressive, and frankly unhinged fan bases in modern business, and it's baked into their stock price. If Tesla cracks autonomy, it will change the world. But if it doesn't, well, politely speaking, they're and that do or die all-in approach creates a very specific kind of pressure. Tesla can't afford to slow down the way Waymo can. Remember, Waymo is a subsidiary of Alphabet. If Waymo burns money by taking the safe approach, who cares? They have the resources to do so. Tesla doesn't have a safety net, and that pressure bleeds into everything. Aggressive timelines, overconfident marketing, and a willingness to ship unfinished technology for the sake of scaling fast. Its stock price and future all depend on the strong belief that autonomy will work and it's just around the corner. This is exactly why, when critics point out Tesla's shortcomings or Elon Musk's many false promises, the response from Tesla fans is often visceral. Because when you criticize Tesla, you're not criticizing a company, you're criticizing an investment thesis. And people take that personally, probably a little too personally. Someone we haven't talked about yet is Uber. They too have taken things personally. They're not necessarily fighting in the same ring as Tesla or Waymo, but Uber has spent years and frankly a comical amount of money on autonomy. From Uber's perspective, the math is simple. A robot doesn't ask for health insurance, it doesn't log off during peak hours, and it definitely doesn't unionize. Years ago, Uber tried to build this future themselves. They launched Uber Advanced Technologies Group and burned through roughly $2.5 billion trying to develop their own self-driving system. It was a catastrophe. Internal inflating, technical failures, lawsuits, and then in 2018, tragedy. One of Uber's test vehicles struck and killed a pedestrian in Arizona. After that, Uber quietly accepted the truth. They were not going to win as a manufacturer. In 2020, Uber sold ATG to Aurora Innovation, but not in a normal way. Uber actually paid Aurora about $400 million to take the division off their hands in exchange for roughly 26% ownership stake. In other words, Uber ditched the risk, the lawsuits, and the responsibility while keeping massive upside if autonomy succeeds. And Uber didn't stop there. They partnered with Waymo. In cities like Phoenix Phoenix, Austin, and Atlanta, opening the Uber app can now match you with a Robotaxi instead of a human driver. Uber takes a cut of the fare. Waymo gets instant access to millions of riders, and the human driver gets quietly replaced. To be fair, Uber points to a real problem as justification for all of this: safety. According to unsealed court documents from 2024, the company received a report of sexual assault or misconduct roughly every 8 minutes. That is not a typo. You didn't mishear me or anything. It's every 8 minutes. This is so bad that Uber introduced a woman preferred feature allowing women riders and drivers to match, which has proven to be so popular it has expanded into 26 cities. And that's where autonomous vehicles enter the picture. A driverless car technically solves this problem altogether. No driver means no risk of driver misconduct. But aside from the creeps, when we are talking about potential benefits to this technology, we have to address the elephant in the room: the death toll. In the United States alone, roughly 40,000 people die in car accidents every single year. And according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 94% of serious crashes are due to human error. Humans get distracted, humans get tired, humans get drunk. A robot doesn't do any of that. A robot doesn't check Instagram at a red light, and a robot definitely doesn't get road rage because someone cut them off. And this is why this technology is such a double-edged sword. On one hand, it does offer real solutions to real problems, including passenger safety and accessibility. On the other hand, this shift concentrates power into the hands of massive corporations, removes millions of jobs, and replaces human accountability with software. So, where does that leave us? Well, I feel like we're entering a future that no one really asked for. Between AI automation and algorithmic decision-making on social media, huge parts of our daily lives are being reshaped without much public input at all. Not because it's necessarily better for us, but because it's better for balance sheets. Even something as ordinary and human as driving is being optimized, abstracted, and handed off in the name of efficiency or growth. And to be clear, progress itself isn't the problem. If autonomous vehicles genuinely reduce crashes, prevent deaths, and make transportation safer, that's a future worth moving toward. Fewer funerals is a good thing. Less fear in everyday life is something we should always strive for. The problem is how we're getting there. Right now, this technological transition is happening behind vague marketing materials, selective data, and proprietary black boxes. Without real transparency, it feels less about safety and more about financial pressure and stock market incentives. These companies love to hide behind mission statements and lofty claims about caring for humanity, but historically, they haven't given us much reason to believe that's their priority. Uber says it cares about its drivers while actively working to replace them. Waymo kept heavily redacted crash data hidden for years, then suddenly changed its tune about transparency when it became convenient. And Tesla and Elon Musk, well, that situation is another level. Between aggressively marketing autonomy that wasn't actually autonomous, making countless promises that were never fulfilled, and fighting regulators to keep safety data out of the public eye, it's hard to believe they truly care about you and I. So I don't know. I just feel like maybe we should reconsider how much faith we were putting in just a small number of corporations that answer to almost no one. And I guess that's my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something today. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. And of course, my sponsor today, Storyblocks. Until next time, bye-bye.